RotoGrinders! Welcome to RotoGrinders Today. I'm Jordan Cooper, a.k.a. BlenderHD, BlenderHD. You're going to follow me on Twitter. And it's Monday, November 20th, reviewing yesterday's NFL Week 11 DFS slate. Hit that thumbs up button first thing in the morning. Hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell to know when we go live. Since it's Monday, it's Mondays with McCool. That's what alliteration does, right? James, if your last name was Wilson, we would be doing Wednesdays with Wilson, right? Instead of Mondays with McCool. So it's a good thing that we're reviewing NFL on when your last name is McCool, because then people aren't really thinking about the past slate on Wednesday, but it's Monday with McCool, the co-author with me on the Theory of Daily Fantasy Sports, How to Think Like a Professional DFS Player, as well as the Theory of DFS for Advanced Players, which comes with the custom Excel tools that you can use. Go pick both up, theoryofdfs.com. I could tell from your tweets yesterday, you did not have a good day in NFL. And you can tell from my tweets, I did have a good day in NFL.
Yeah. I mean, I'm never going to do well on a slate where the cash game optimal ends up putting up like a 30. At one point, the cash game optimal, which had 16 dupes in the $100 single entry, was in like first. It's like, I'm never going to have a good slate when that happens.
If you played the highest owned player in every position, you would have scored like 182 points.
No, 186. 186.
Right. Well, no, a slight deviation was 186. So, like, the lineup that I was considering in cash would have put up 182. Or, I mean, basically, I played one of the three most popular lineups, but of course, I played the third one that had Cooper Kupp in it. That I still won more than half my head-to-heads. What are people playing, James? I still won more than half my head-to-heads on DraftKings, and that's kind of weird. But you mentioned the chalk yesterday. I mean, essentially, like, we went through position by position and said, if you played Kyler Murray, Brock Purdy, right? If you played Devin Singletary, Brian Robinson, Tony Pollard, even Christian McCaffrey, I guess. You played Trey McBride, Evan Ingram, or pretty much anyone, Dalton Kincaid, anyone tight end, no one really separated. If you played the Commanders defense or the Miami defense, right? If you did that, if you played Tank Dell, Rondell Moore, Tyreek Hill, DJ Moore, maybe not Marquise Brown, like, you could fit all those guys into one lineup. And a lot of people did that and split a lot of prizes. I mean, my deviations were a little bit better, hence why you can see here in the $50 red zone, I came in fifth. I was in first heading into the late games. So maybe I could have gotten 25,000, but if you take a look at my lineup, doesn't look all that contrarian outside of the stack. Trevor Lawrence, Calvin Ridley, Evan Ingram, and then jam the chalk. And San Francisco defense was 3.2% owned, right? We found out that 28% on Rondell Moore probably was probably overowned if you knew how he was actually going to be used in the Cardinals offense. He ended up basically being the go out and get air yards guy, and Greg Dortch was the possession receiver.
I want to victory lap this. All right.
Okay.
I said that Rondell Moore was the worst play on the slate yesterday. Like, in every piece of content that I put out, said that he sucks. He's not who's going to take like the Michael Wilson role. The person who's going to take it is going to be Greg Dortch. I nailed that. I got wiped in DFS. Okay. I cashed one lineup, but I freaking nailed the Rondell Moore being a worse play than Greg Dortch play.
But he got a 48-yard touchdown.
It's the longest play of his freaking career, man. Like, it's such an
Isn't that what happened with Trent Irwin the week before?
Yeah, that was super annoying too. It's like the same thing. At least Trent Irwin, like, in the past, has shown that he can be a guy who runs those kind of routes. This is the first time in Rondell Moore's entire NFL career that he has ran a route that was longer than 4 yards. And he just so happens to catch a freaking 48-yard touchdown. I was giga tilted at the beginning of the slate yesterday. I ended up doing okay. The slate sucked because all the chalk crushed. But I thought it was a pretty straightforward slate. I didn't think that it was that hard. I had a lot of the chalk spread out. I just didn't play it in the right combinations, aka all together.
Right, basically all together. Because on Friday and as well as my Saturday stream, I was focused primarily around team stacks.
Yeah.
So like let me target teams that are going to score a lot of points. Don't necessarily worry about run backs. And the other focus was that the Houston Arizona game, with that total, the prices, everyone was underpriced in that game. Like everyone. Maybe not Nico Collins, and to some extent, maybe not Rondell Moore, right? Maybe he should have been 3,300. So it was very hard for me to see a situation where no one in that game gets there.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So at those prices, you're probably going to need to play one or two pieces. But I would look to avoid stacking that game minimally. Meaning that if you're going to play Murray, if you're going to play Stroud, overstack the game. Now, if you're not going to play those quarterbacks, then feel free to do and find something different. But like, I wasn't going to head in with a Kyler Murray, Rondell Moore, Trey McBride, bring it back with Singletary or Dell type of lineup. It's like I'm either playing 5 or 6 guys from the game with the quarterback, or if I'm not playing the quarterback, then I still need to have pieces. And the pieces that I prioritized were primarily Devin Singletary at 5,300 and Rondell Moore at 3,300, despite the fact that he got there because of pricing. That 3,300 Rondell Moore allowed me to stack like any game I wanted. I played a Dak Prescott, CeeDee Lamb lineup. You're able to get Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey into your lineups. So I didn't see really any very low-priced players on this slate. I wanted to focus on the mid-range types of wide receivers, and one of them that I did was Calvin Ridley, the Jacksonville guys, Ridley, Kirk, those types of guys, as well as like DJ Moore, who ended up coming in way higher owned than. I mean, what was up with that? Out of all of this ownership at wide receiver, like I didn't have Tank this high, right? This is the Wildcat. Let me go to the Millie. Let me go to the Millionaire Maker, right? I thought Singletary would be super duper chalk. So 41 was a little higher than I thought. I had it at like 35.
Yeah.
Trey McBride, I had it about that same level, 35. But Tank Dell, I had it like 24, right? Brian Robinson, I had it 20. But DJ Moore, I had it like 12. And he came in double that. I don't.
Yeah.
I mean, I couldn't gauge the error that I made, even though I played lineups from this game, from Detroit, Chicago.
Yeah.
I didn't think it would be as high owned as it was. And it turns out that Miami actually got squeezed more than I thought. Tyreek Hill would end up being the de facto 20+% owned wide receiver. And I thought Amon-Ra St. Brown would be the one that less people would be willing to play, maybe 12 to 14%. And it kind of was the reverse.
Yeah, it was. I had. So let's talk about the Devin Singletary thing first. Singletary, I thought the Singletary was a fine play at like 30 to 35%, but at 47%, I wouldn't have touched him. That was just that was really, really high for even single entry stuff. For a running back that primarily gets there on rushing volume, right? Like the game had to go right, and he had to get 25 to 30 carries to like really get there. So 30, 35%, that made sense. As far as wide receivers go, I had DJ Moore at 15%, and I had Amon-Ra St. Brown at like 14%, which I was fine with both of those. And I actually liked Chicago Stacks a lot. I wrote them up as one of my favorite lower owned stacks. And it turned out that DJ Moore actually had like a chunk of ownership that I didn't expect him to have. And if I'd known that DJ Moore was going to be 25% owned instead of 15% owned, probably not into that. So there were a couple guys where ownership was going to be on Houston, Arizona. Like it was just everybody wrote up Arizona. Everybody was writing up Houston pieces. Like that was going to be giga chalk.
It was hard to build good projected lineups without any piece of that game.
It was, and the way that I looked at it and the way that I wrote about it was, based on ownership projections, it's fair to assume that about 55% of the total field would be exposed to Arizona, Houston, one way or another, with like 25% to stacks and 30% to Singletary. What it actually ended up being was like 60 to 65% of the field was exposed to Houston, Arizona, which is a lot. But that didn't mean that you faded them because they were all underpriced. Like every player was underpriced in that game and had the highest game total on the slate. Houston had a team total like 28. So you get pieces of it, but you had to be really smart about the way that you built it. I agreed with you that you should, if you're going to stack that game, if you're going to use CJ Stroud or Kyler Murray, overstack it, get 5 or 6 players from it. And the rule that I set up was only one of Marquise Brown or Trey McBride and only one of Tank Dell or Trey McBride, because those were going to be the guys that I figured would be the highest owned. So because of that, I was getting Dortch. I was getting Marquise Brown with Dalton Schultz. I was getting Nico Collins. Like I was getting pieces of the game, but the low-owned pieces of the game sucked. So it didn't matter. But that game, this was a really, really, really interesting week where ownership was right on a lot of the pieces that you needed, and not only right to the point where they would hit their median expectation, but that where they would just blow it away and be by far the best plays on the slate. And it was hard to argue with it. And that's coming from somebody like me who usually looks for a reason to fade high ownership. And I couldn't find it. Like Singletary, I even looked at my player pool. Singletary in most weeks that we have a running back in Singletary's position, I would have just crossed him off if I'd have thought that he was going to be 40% owned with pure rushing volume concerns. But this week I was like, I'll have him in my Buffalo stack. Nobody's going to have Buffalo stacks. Like I might have him in my San Francisco stack, but then Purdy ended up being higher owned, like it was fine because what are you going to do when everybody's underpriced? It was a weird week in terms of pricing and the way that the ownership structure turned out.
Devin Singletary had the highest yardage prop of any running back on the slate.
He did. It was higher than Christian McCaffrey. Yeah, it was higher.
It was higher than McCaffrey's. Well, obviously McCaffrey gets receiving yards and stuff like that, but I mean his rushing yard prop was over 80 yards.
Well, no, it was 72 by the time Locke came around. It got pushed down a little bit, but it was high. It was high for a $5,300 running back.
Right. So I mean, I played 10 lineups. I had Devin Singletary in 9 out of 10 lineups.
Yeah, like what are you going to do? I had him in 2 of my 5, and that is crazy for a player like me to have somebody that highly owned at like what I don't consider to be a position where I prefer to get ownership. I prefer to have lower owned running backs typically, and I couldn't get away from him this week.
Also, from the receiving standpoint in that game, I barely played Marquise Brown, and I played a ton of Rondell Moore because of price. It really just came down to Marquise Brown. He gave me a 15% own, which is around where I thought 15 to 18%. I thought Rondell Moore would be 20 to 24%.
Yeah.
And I didn't necessarily see that big of a difference between the two. And with Marquise Brown's price being 5,300 compared to 3,300, if Marquise Brown gets there, I think Kyler gets there more likely than not, because Rondell Moore doesn't have to put up as much as Marquise Brown does for a ceiling. So that's why, I only had one Kyler lineup. I mean, I only had one Kyler and one Stroud lineup out of 10 lineups, but I had tons of Singletary plus Dell, Singletary plus Dell, Singletary plus Woods. And then in my Stroud stack, I had Dell plus Schultz, right? Mm-hmm. To use the tight end spot instead of playing Trey McBride in that spot. Yeah. That's a lineup that I played Marquise Brown in, right? And then you mix in everything else from there. And then pay up options, I'm pretty much going to Tyreek Hill or Christian McCaffrey, although I took shots on Cooper Kupp, which didn't work out because
man. Yeah. A lot of sharp people are on Cooper Kupp last night, I think. But as far as ownership, This was a hard week to get away from the ownership, and it just ended up crushing. I think that it's just one of those hard lessons to learn as a contrarian player, that sometimes you have to eat the ownership. And if you don't want to eat the ownership, then you probably shouldn't play a slate like we had yesterday. It was so, or at least lower your volume, or play more cash games, or like something to mitigate. Or like if you're a
But
contrarian
being
player,
contrarian isn't just about fading chalk. It's about
no. It's not in terms of what a good contrarian player is. But there are a lot of players out there who want to be overly contrarian, and in situations like that, I think that they make the mistake of still trying to play that way, even when everything, like this week, says you should definitely be eating a lot of this chalk in select ways. You should be eating a lot of these players that are under-owned in select ways. And that's a lesson a lot of people have to learn, in that it's not always right to try to have like all of the relative value in the world. You remember that Millie Maker lineup from a couple of years ago, where the dude had like nobody over 5% owned, and he won the Millie Maker by like 16 points or something? Like, that's the kind of player that I'm talking about here. Like, that people like that need to learn that slates like this is a learning moment of sometimes like the best plays are literally just given to you on a silver platter, and you should just play them. It's okay. You can just play them.
You know, one way to figure out those types of things, by using SimLabs, which is our new product here, simulation-based product.
Good pitch.
Play-by-play simulations, ownership simulations, contest simulations. That's available right now for DK main slates and Island Showdown games. You can try it out for free. RotoGrinders.com/SimLabs. It'll be gone. But we're adding sports. We're adding sites. Soon it'll be behind a paywall for premium members only. But you could go into SimLabs with the RotoGrinders projections and just run lineups in different types of contests and everything. And I did use SimLabs not to build my lineups, but to research the slate. And my original thought was, maybe if I don't stack the Arizona-Houston game, I don't play any piece of the game. And it turns out I was wrong. So because I go through SimLabs, and no matter what I seem to do, no matter what lineup I wanted to make, I got at least two pieces of that game in every lineup. Every lineup that rated out anywhere close to well. So once I saw that, I'm like, okay, I got to play these guys. And the running back wide receiver combinations, like, because I like playing, if I'm going to play two guys from a game, I don't like doing the double stack wide receiver without the quarterback. I'd rather do running back wide receiver, rushing touchdowns, passing touchdowns. I wasn't seeing as much of Connor plus McBride, Connor plus Brown, Connor plus Moore. And I was seeing a metric shit ton of Singletary plus Dell, Singletary plus Dell, Singletary plus Dell. So I'm just like, okay, well, it looks like that. I'm playing those two guys. And then on the Arizona side, since I wasn't seeing Connor, I'm like, I'm not playing. The only time I'm playing two Cardinals in a lineup is if I have Stroud or Murray in there. I didn't just come up with this. This wasn't like just like, oh, I just theory out of thin air. It's like, no, I just ran the lineups. I just ran through SimLabs and go, okay, let me see some DAC stacks. Oh, Singletary Dell, Singletary Dell, Singletary, in the other spots, right? Double tight end with Trey McBride, like that type of stuff. So I'm like, dude, I can't get. If I excluded those players, my lineup projected like 15 to 20 points lower than like anything else. So I'm like, okay, I guess I'll find a way to be contrarian elsewhere. And I did that by doing things like you mentioned, like playing Trevor Lawrence in this lineup. I played a Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid lineup. I played a CeeDee Lamb, Dak, CeeDee, Ferguson lineup. Where could I get different on the stacks? And I thought the Fields and the golf stuff wasn't going to be as high owned as it was. So playing Fields more, Komet wasn't as contrarian as I thought it would be. But in those lineups, in that game, I overstacked. So if I've had a lineup with Fields, Moore, Komet, Gibbs, and Amon-Ra. And then I also had Goff, Amon-Ra, Laporta, Moore, and Kmet. Like 5 guys in the same game type of thing. But there were so many games on the slate that you could have gotten different just in the stack.
Yeah.
I mean, you could have gotten. I didn't know. Well, here's another thing. This is a weekly recurrence. I did not know. This is the Wildcat. 26% owned in the Wildcat. So obviously the sharper people were on him more. 17% in the Millie Maker. I couldn't gauge whether or not people wanted to play Tony Pollard or people didn't want to play Tony Pollard. I mean, in my 10 lineups, I think I played Tony Pollard in 4 of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I vastly preferred Tony Pollard to. I mean, I did the very simple thing, Occam's razor. What teams have high team totals? I want players from those teams, right?
Right.
You take a look and you go, should I play Breece Hall? And I go, do the Jets have a high team total? No, then I'm not playing them, right? So I played Travis Etienne, 7,200. Obviously not in my Jacksonville stack. Playing Christian McCaffrey. I didn't play Devon A-Chain. Are you surprised that he came in at 12% owned? So discuss those 2 things. Now, A-Chain's ownership being 12%, and whether or not what were you doing with Tony Pollard? Now, obviously, he got there.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, he got there. He eventually got there.
I thought that Tony Pollard was the best running back play on the slate.
Okay.
I mean, it's Dallas as a huge favorite with a high team total against a team that I think sucks. Like that, I want to play running backs in that situation. It helps that Tony Pollard's role is terrific. So I thought that Tony Pollard at 6,600 this week was a much better play than last week. And I liked him a lot last week. So if I was into him last week, I'm going to be into him this week. I couldn't nail down ownership on him, man. I could not tell. His acceptable range of ownership for me was anywhere between 10% owned and 30% owned. And I didn't know where he was going to land in there, but I was fine with any of it because he was good. Like it was a really good spot for him. I thought that Achane was going to be like 20+% owned.
Really? No. Oh, whoa. The other. Okay, that way.
Well, so no, look, I did not
be like 4% owned. I thought maybe some people take a shot. I mean, Mostert's there. They got 3 running backs. I mean, it just felt like
I had him projected for like 9% ownership.
But I haven't projected from what was your mean projection on him from a player projection standpoint?
For projections? Let's see.
Yeah, because I mean, dude, if I would have ran 3, I ran 300 lineups. I got 0 of them. So like when I'm getting 0 of someone, I get a little bit shocked when he comes in at 12% owned.
So I just relooked. I had him projected for 10.5% ownership, and my median was 12.3.
Yeah, that's not good.
No, it's not. But
right.
People love the dude. Like he's one of those name value guys that just gets a bump in ownership, mostly because he is who he is. And people were excited to play him coming off of IR. There's a lot of season-long guys who activated him off of their bench that now want to play him in DFS as well. Like, it was just a bump. I thought that he was going to be even higher owned because Miami had such a good team. Miami had the highest team total on the slate. And he was priced at, I mean, people weren't playing the pay-up options here as far as salary for running back.
I mean, who cares about the whoa? Who cares about the pay-up options? You tell them. You have your projections in front of you, right?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, these are your projections, which I'm not saying that I agree with or don't agree with, but
Sure.
What was your projection your mean projection for Aaron Jones?
For Aaron Jones, I had him for 12.5.
Okay, and he's cheaper. James Conner, what did you have at 5,700?
11.8.
Breece Hall at 6,400.
14.
Okay, I mean, like, we're listening, and you had obviously Pollard higher, right?
Yep.
I mean, if you just take a look at the running back, Jerome Ford, Jahmyr Gibbs, David Montgomery. It just feels like all of these guys had a higher mean projection than Devon Achane, and most of these guys are cheaper.
It's just not about that with this guy.
Oh, okay. It's the I know ball people.
It is. It's just people who are just, they're just pumped to play him again.
Spreadsheet,
I mean, you have
optimize spreadsheet people. We can't get Achane when we have a projection that low.
These thought leader podcast guys who are just talking nonstop about starting Achane over every other freaking running back in the league. I'm not going to name names, but they don't put out good content anymore, so it just has to be shot content stuff, and that's where it comes from. You end up with a whole bunch of ownership on these guys that shouldn't actually get ownership because talking heads just push content, and it's not good content. So that's where it comes from.
But then we have Saquon Barkley at 7,100. He puts up 30 points. Well,
yeah, obviously, because Tommy DeVito is the freaking man.
Did you expect that? Did you expect that they would? Now, see, this is the weird dynamic that you see. Like I'm on my stream on Saturday, I said the game that I was avoiding the most was the Commanders Giants game.
Yeah.
And people played these Sam Howell stacks, and good luck to you if you want to, but when everyone's healthy, they throw to so many people.
Yeah.
That you could say that he's going to throw the ball 40 times, and there's all these. It's ridiculous. Like people are playing McLaurin like he's the nuts and everything. Like, dude, no one gets more than a 18% target share, right? 16% target share, and then obviously at Tommy DeVito on the other side. I'm like, I don't know if the Giants can move the ball. Maybe Barkley you could use. But the thing is that people jammed in, Commanders defense. Commanders defense isn't good. The only reason we look at defense ownership, I'm surprised they weren't even higher owned. Pittsburgh came in higher owned. I understand the Jets. They were the cheap defense du jour. Miami, I understand, but they're 3,600. The only reason they're 3,600 is because they're facing the Giants with Tommy DeVito. Mm-hmm. The Commanders against any other team would be the $2,300 defense.
Right.
They do not have a good defense, and they still got 9 sacks because the Giants' offensive line is, it's a train wreck. But I don't think anyone expected Tommy DeVito to throw for nearly 300 yards and 3 touchdowns.
I had some Darius Slayton. He kept coming up in runs. I manually removed him from a couple because I didn't want it too much. But I was getting some Darius Slayton. I was getting some Curtis Samuel, RIP injuries in lineups. But I mostly agreed with you that I really didn't want very much from that game. I did almost cross it off, but I figured with the amount of people that were taking shots on Rondale Moore, those receivers, specifically Curtis Samuel and Darius Slayton that kept showing up in runs, I was just like, they can't be that much worse at low ownership. Like if Rondale Moore is going to be 25% owned and Darius Slayton gets to be 1% owned, then, whatever. I guess I'll take some shots on those. But I wasn't really that interested in Sam Howell stacks. There wasn't any chance I was touching DeVito. Saquon Barkley's usage has still been terrific. So maybe I should have thought a little bit more about him, but I wouldn't have played him yesterday. The running back options were too good with Pollard, Brian Robinson, and Devin Singletary. So, I don't know. I'm not getting on very much of that game at all. And I certainly am not playing Terry McLaurin. I don't know why anybody would play Terry McLaurin yesterday. Or Sam Howell stacks for that instance. We had plenty of cheap options. We had the Arizona-Houston game. We had Brock Purdy, who was underpriced. We had, you could have even gone with Seattle. You could have done the Seattle Rams game. That game environment was fine. There were so many other game environments that were better than Washington Giants.
Right. You could if you wanted a cheap guy, you could have taken shots on Christian Watson, JSN, sure. Brandon Cooks.
Jaden Reed was popping up in a lot of my stuff too. Jaden Reed was a great play. If you're into it, Green Bay's team total was higher than Washington's. So I don't know why people were on Washington, really. I was going to say
Giants stock and they're going to roll them over. That's the reason you play Brian Robinson.
typically, if you're going to play, what people make the big mistake on is that they only want to play the running back from teams that should blow out the other team, right? Like that's the big mistake that people make when they think about blowouts in the NFL. A team is like an 11-point favorite, and they're like, oh, I got to play the running back in the defense here because the other team can't score. But if they're going to blow out the other team, that means that points will be scored, so you can stack that team. And I think that that's kind of what people did with Washington. But Washington didn't have a high team total. It's just the Giants are god-awful. So I don't know why people were really stacking Washington.
It's not just the team total. It's the fact that, like, they have so many targets on their team.
Well, yeah,
that they can score 35 points and no one gets there. Right? I mean, they can. Look at the Chiefs. We see it with the Chiefs all the time. The Chiefs put up 42 points, and the only person that you needed to have was Kelsey.
Yeah.
Like, that's it. They have 3 rushing touchdowns from an end around, a McKinnon thing, and a Pacheco goal line thing, and Justin Watson has the other touchdown. And it's like, well, Travis Kelsey has 22 points, and he's the highest scorer on the team. And you're like, well, what happened there? It's like, yeah, because it's spread around offenses. Then we take a look at the Arizona-Houston game. They were cheap, and people are out. Right? Noah Brown's not there. Right? No, Michael Wilson's not there. I mean, so you sit there and you go, let's see. They're cheap and they're condensed. And you wonder why in the Sims, the game was just coming up too much. Like every piece was worthwhile to play. So like going to other places instead of that and just ignoring that game, to me that was the mistake that people made. You could have gotten there not stacking. Look, I had the Trevor Lawrence lineup. You could have played a Brock. Dude, if you would have played like in this lineup, like imagine playing Purdy, and instead of playing Ridley, you play Ayuk. You go down on defense, down to the Jets defense or something like that. And there, I mean, you get there that way also. Instead of Pollard, you could play. I mean, you could have played Barkley for 500 more. I mean, like, but really the key to the slate. I mean, if you didn't have 46% owned Devin Singletary at 22 points at 5,300 and a 30 burger from a 40% owned 6K Tank Dell, like it's hard to win. It was hard to win without pieces from that game.
I do want to be clear here, though. You shouldn't be looking at a week like this and saying, "Oh, I need to eat all of the chalk every single week." This week,
it's the context of this specific slate. I mean,
sure. But people are going to take this. They're going to take not only the slate, but they're going to take the content after the slate where it was like, "Oh, this was so obvious. You should have done this. Should have done this. Should have done that." And what they're going to do is they're going to say, "Oh, I can't fade the chalk because the chalk nukes all the time." And people do it. But I do not want people to take that away from this week. This week, in the context of how this slate was built and in the context of the pricing and the team totals, we had a significant spot here with Houston, Arizona, where all of the players were basically underpriced. It was a high team total. And it was a spot where eating a lot of that chalk made a lot of sense. It does not mean that every week you need to be playing the 40% owned 6K wide receiver. It doesn't mean you be throwing your cash games in every single GPP and hoping to train with 16 other people at the top of the $2,400 contest or whatever, right? Like, you shouldn't be doing that. You still do have to take this stuff in context. So please, anybody watching the show, I think most people who watch the show have a relatively better understanding of DFS because of what we have taught them over the years. But I just want to make sure that people who listen don't take this week and say, "Oh, I have to play cash lineups and GPPs," because that is not the optimal way to play GPPs. You still have to think about things in context.
Right. If you make Devin Singletary 7,300 and Tank Dell 7,300, if you make them both 7,300, and you told me that they're both going to be 40% owned, they wouldn't come up as much in the Sims.
Right.
I mean, that's it's just a byproduct. You tell me the Texans are playing the Eagles and they have a 21 implied team total, then the projections wouldn't be as high. I mean, it's not a factor of the thing about running sims, which you could try at rotogrinders.com/simlabs, is that all those levers, James, that we talk about, the projection lever, the leverage lever, the correlation lever, like it's always going to be a balance of the three. And what sims will do is balance that for you. So hence why running lineups through simulations and seeing the trends of the types of lineups that come out plus EV according to our contest simulations, and then building a. Do you have to take one of those lineups? No, not necessarily. But seeing the trend of that on a given slate. So running, I didn't say you had. Well, what's the good chalk? What's the bad chalk? Well, all I know is that based on our ownership, like I couldn't. Devin Singletary, Tank Dell, and Rondell Moore combined, like we're in like half my line, like half the lineups. Like no matter what I did, more than half the lineups had all those three players in it. So what did it tell me? That if I'm going to build ownership around other lineups to get low owned, those are going to be the high owned pieces that I have in my lineup. And that's what I did. And so hence why I build that way. The simulations can tell you that. That's why you're using that. You know, when I ran simulations, I didn't see Connor Marquise Brown. I barely saw Singletary Nico Collins. I saw Singletary Woods because of the cheap price. And then once you see that and you go, oh, I'm also getting a decent amount of Evan Ingram, Calvin Ridley, and Christian Kirk at their ownership because they were low owned for their projection. And the Jaguars were favored and they had a higher team total than the Cardinals. So when I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, no one's playing Trevor Lawrence. I mean, he's really low owned. Okay. Let me plug in Lawrence. Let me plug in Ridley. Let me plug in Ingram. And then just run. Then just go. What do I get? Singletary, Dell, Rondell Moore. And then it's like, okay, what can I fit around here? Tyreek Hill, Tony Pollard. I mean, like, this isn't like rocket science. Like, the tools are available for you to look at this type of stuff. I had 10 lineups, and I built my 10 lineups around. Now, some of them failed.
Yeah.
The Josh Allen stuff. I mean, it's not like the Bills were coming up that much in Sims anyway. But at the Bills' projected ownership, I'm like, you can't let Josh Allen be that low owned and not take a shot.
Right. I made a huge annoying boo-boo with my Buffalo stack. When I was running Buffalo stacks, it kept wanting to give me Josh Allen. It kept wanting to give me
Shakir, and he ended up doing it.
It wanted to keep giving me Shakir, and I took him out. I didn't want to overstack it. I didn't think that it was right to overstack it. And I ended up having, like most of the plays were Josh Allen with Stephon Diggs, Dalton Kincaid, and Shakir. And I was like, one of these guys got to go. And it was freaking Shakir, man.
No, I kept on getting Allen, Shakir, Kincaid.
And that would have worked as well.
And then in that lineup, I have McCaffrey or Tyreek Hill in it, and I go, this doesn't make sense.
But it
does. The whole point of the Sims is that it's telling you that. It's telling you that.
That
right?
Makes sense. Yeah.
I know to you, your feeble brain, you don't get how this lineup gets there because, like, why would I play the high price guy from like? No, but it does. There's a path. It happens.
In one of my 150s, freaking Dalton Kincaid, man. He gets 10.6 fantasy points in the first half. Does not get another. And I say into Discord, if Dalton Kincaid can get me like 5 points, I'm in a great spot. I said that he did not get another target for the rest of the freaking game.
Well, he didn't need to get a target. Did you see that, Zach? I mean, what's the point of Zach Wilson? What is the point of Zach Wilson?
No, I mean the Jets need to fire people. Like I cannot fathom how they thought that going into the season, Zach Wilson was a viable backup to have to Aaron Rodgers. Zach Wilson is not even backup quarterback caliber. He's so bad. He's like
the Jets are looking to get Tommy DeVito. I mean, it's making Tommy DeVito look like a world beater.
Well, and dude, think about this. Like somebody mentioned it in the chat, but Tommy Vito threw for 3 touchdowns. Kenny Pickett hasn't had a single game in his career with 3 touchdowns in a single game. We've got quarterbacks like Kenny Pickett and Zach Wilson starting games. You can't tell me that those guys should be starting over, Jake Locke? Like, give Jake Locke a freaking shot over in the Jets. Like, at least he's fun to watch fail. Zach Wilson's just sad. Just sad. Yeah, Flacco is now on the Browns. Like, Flacco is we have not seen old man Flacco play a game in a while, but I'm almost certain that he's better than Zach Wilson, even as a 56-year-old.
Thompson Robinson had a decent game for the Browns.
It just, like, Bajan, the backup for the Bears. Like, he went out there and won, 2 games? Went 2-2?
Aiden O'Connell is serviceable, it seems.
These guys are fine. And then you got Zach Wilson out here. I cannot fathom how they thought that it was okay to keep Zach Wilson as the backup. I just can't.
It seems like whenever that game is on Red Zone or whatever, that it's Zach Wilson trying to figure out how to play football. I mean, like, it's not a, well, he overthrows the ball, or it's not like, to me, it's just like, no, this dude just takes the snap and, like, literally has no idea what to do.
Yeah. It's not that
I
he's
just
inaccurate.
get a sense that he has no clue how to read anything or run an offense. And, like, the Tommy DeVito is like, I'm not athletically gifted or anything like that, but it's like, I could do 5 simple things okay. And just as long as I get to do the 5 simple things, I could be serviceable. Zach Wilson feels like he's not aware of the rules of football. Like, I'm going to snap and I'm going to throw to someone that looks green. And I don't know what that's going to be until I figure it out on every play.
I truly can't fathom how he's starting games. I really just don't get it. That they would be better off. I mean, and they've passed on so many. They would be better
off just snapping directly to Breece Hall every play.
They would be better off. Use one of your 3 running backs you paid for no reason. I would 100% rather have Kaepernick. I don't know. I would rather have Kaepernick with 1 foot than Zach Wilson, man.
Just play all the running backs, right? Don't get rid of Michael Carter. Play 3 running backs in the backfield and play some type of weird triple option thing.
Yeah. Well, and even, dude, going into this game, the Jets signaled that they are no longer trying this season because they came out and said that they are going to play younger players this week. The Jets have literally mailed it in. So have fun with it. Run like 3 running back sets. Let your linemen take snaps at wide receiver or something. Like, go do some stupid stuff out there on the field and just have fun, because this is not entertaining and it's not working. So one or the other, right? It's
teams are going for it on 4th and 7 on nearly the 50-yard line against them, because they don't mind giving the ball back to them even on the 50, because they still can't get into field goal range.
No, we have completely derailed the DFS portion of this, but they
were saying on the broadcast, who cares?
They were saying on the broadcast that if the Bills got a 2-score lead, that it was over for
right?
This was when it was 6-0, and the Bills.
Right, I know. I was listening to that. It was 6-0. Like, do you kick the field goal here or go for it in 4th? And I think Romo, I think it was Romo that said, "Well, you go up 2 scores, 9-0, it could be game over."
Yeah, that is insane. Like, you hear that, and somebody like Zach Wilson needs to go start working at a car dealership, or Saleh needs to be fired, or Joe Douglas needs to go join the Raiders. I don't know. So something needs to happen here, but you can't continue to start Zach Wilson. If that is the sentiment from the media and from the league, that if this is a 9-point game, Zach Wilson can't do it, that's done. You're done.
What is Tim Boyle thinking on the sidelines?
Does
this guy have a job and he's in and I'm not in, and Tim Boyle's awful.
I mean, who's that quarterback that threw like 5 interceptions in his first game? Get him in there.
Oh, you're talking about Nathan Peterman?
Yeah, Nathan. Wasn't that for the Jets?
No, that was for the Bills, I thought.
Oh, it was for the Bills. That's right. Sorry. Yeah, it was the other New York team. I thought that it was for the Jets for a second. I was like, my God, the Jets quarterback situation has been hilarious for like a decade. It's so bad. Yeah, New Yorkers are really
And the
down.
Jets quarterback situation has always been. I mean, since what? Joe Namath?
Yeah,
Namath,
I've what
name
the best QB that they've had in the last 20 years was what, Mark Sanchez?
Yeah, that's not. I mean, they've had serviceable ones that are like past their prime, like Vinny Testaverde,
Oh, I love
right?
Vinny Testaverde. Yeah.
Right? They
Yeah.
early, what, Boomer Esiason at one
Well,
point. But I mean,
they had Ryan Fitzpatrick, right? He was probably the highest upside QB the Jets have had in the past 10 years.
right. But they've not had
Uh,
a good quarterback since
no.
Joe Namath. Like
That's
Ken
crazy.
O'Brien wasn't a great. I mean, not a Pro Bowl worthy quarterback.
Imagine being a Jets fan and looking at the Green Bay franchise, who have had only Hall of Fame quarterbacks for like 2 decades.
Well, same for
And
the
now-
Niners. I mean, take a look at the
Yeah.
49ers also.
Yeah. Oh,
They
man.
go from Joe Montana to Steve Young, and it's like,
Yeah.
okay, well, good luck, right?
I mean, Mark Sanchez, I think you're right, was the most like median expectation, most consistent quarterback the Jets have had in the last 10 years. Ryan Fitzpatrick was for sure the highest upside QB, and the team just turned on him. But man, that is so rough. That is so rough. And I am extra tilted about the Jets stuff because I have a season-long bet with a friend that the Jets won't make the playoffs. And every time they win one of these BS games, like they won against the Eagles, and I'm just tilting my entire face off because like those are the kind of games they have to win in order to have a shot at the playoffs. And they're 4-6. Like they're not going to make the playoffs. Their schedule is brutal for the next 4 weeks anyway. But those games where it gave people hope that Zach Wilson might be able to turn this ship into the playoffs and Aaron Rodgers can come back and be a hero, ship has sailed. Blow up the franchise. Just send it to Bob Rigo. It's done.
So, James, theory of DFS. I think like a professional DFS player, getting back to DFS type of stuff. Those concepts like the levers, like we talked about, like simulations are a more precise methodology. There are blunt methodologies using lineup HQ, using projections, all of that type of information, all the concepts behind that. You could learn them all. The theory of daily fantasy sports. That's the point of the course, right? It's not about like, oh, how to beat NBA DFS. No, this applies to all sports. It's the game theory of DFS. Then the advanced players guide is more of the application side of it, which includes your custom Excel tools that I do use. I've been using it in NHL, the running 300 lineups and then weeding out, like just using the portfolio trimmer. Get rid of all this shit and let me see what's left, and then try to figure out who's on what team. Still, I mean, I'm getting better with that, right? I know I could look at it. I could look at a slate and I go, oh, the Panthers. Oh, Barkov is out. That means probably either Bennett or Lundell probably move up to the first line. And it's like, wow, I'm just not only would I know that, but the fact that I can name the players. And then there are certain teams that I don't play that often that I do need to like who is on the Blue Jackets.
I'm honestly surprised that you weren't into NHL before recently. It seems like a sport that you would love.
Yeah, I like winning at stuff.
Well, but also like you're like a soccer guy, right? And like
right.
you like baseball DFS, and like those 3 sports, soccer, NHL, and MLB, I think are very akin to each other. And I especially because NHL is a little bit niche, and the field is soft, so that seems like a sport that you'd really like.
And the small field stuff I'm used to from soccer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So yeah, I'll be playing NHL tonight. Right. So there's a 7-game slate, I believe, tonight, and we have great we have great NHL content here. Mm-hmm. NHL projections, slate summaries, expert surveys. Our Discord is amazing for NHL. Those guys have they're on you don't need Twitter. Like everything is any line changes, any morning skates, anything. Anything that's relevant to the slate and newsworthy goalkeeper changes, anything is posted in our Discord. You could join RotoGrinders.com/Discord. And James, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter over at Pater_DFS, and you can find all of my models and such over at PaterDFS.com. I have a lot of cool research things up. NHL specifically, I have some cool matchup stuff for subscribers. Shows you pace and high danger stuff like that. So if you're into NHL stuff, which we've just been talking about, come over and try those things out.
We got tons of content. Even today, we got NBA, right? So you guys Grinders Live. It's crunch time. Got the pre-lock show for Monday Night Football. Definitely try out SimLabs for that. RotoGrinders.com/SimLabs. It's soon going to be behind the premium paywall. Become a premium member. Click on the link in the description. Get $10 off your first month. I'll be here tomorrow. Maybe we're talking. I think maybe we're doing hockey tomorrow. Maybe we'll do it Tuesday. What else is going on? So I don't know. I haven't looked on the little schedule. Just a programming note. Thursday.
There's no hockey games tomorrow.
No. So what the hell are we going to do tomorrow? We'll figure it out. We'll figure it out. We'll do it live. We'll figure it out. So hit that like button. Hit the subscribe button. Hit the notification bell. Just the programming note. Thursday and Friday, there will be no RotoGrinders Today show. It's Thanksgiving, so I won't be here. So you won't see me Thursday. You won't see me Friday. You won't see a thumbnail. So you have to get all your stuff in. Probably we'll talk about the Thanksgiving slate, I guess, on Wednesday. We'll figure it out this week. We always do. You know, I'm here. We always figure it out here. Weekdays, 11 o'clock in the morning. Talking about all things you're thinking about in daily fantasy, props, and pick'em on RotoGrinders Today.